Hello, Jericho here. So, for my school project, I'll be talking about two pandemics in history compared to COVID 19. Unfortunately, there's no visuals, but I'll explain later. The pandemics listed are the Asian flu and the flu pandemic. Let's start off with some key words here. You can pause the video and take a moment to read it. Anyhow, let's start off with the first pandemic, the Asian flu. The 1957 Asian flu pandemic was an influenza that was identified in East Asia in February of 1957, which soon spread worldwide, causing millions of deaths. The flu was caused by a virus known as influenza A, subtype H2H2. Research indicates that the virus is a strain of resortant mixed species originating from a previous strain of avian influenza and other human influenza viruses. The virus spread throughout China in the first months of 1957 and reached the United States by midsummer. At first, it only affected relatively few people. However, several months later, numerous cases of infection were reported, especially the young, elderly, and pregnant women. The uprising in cases was the result of a second wave of illness that struck the northern hemisphere in November of 1957. Sorry for the stutter. By that time, the pandemic already killed a huge amount in the UK, and soon in December, around 3,550 deaths have been reported in both England and Wales. It was particularly the US that was devastated in March of 1958, a year in. An estimated 69,800 deaths were reported in the US. The outbreak was associated with variations in susceptibility and course of illness. Some people experience only minor symptoms, such as cough, mild fever, but others experience life-threatening symptoms, such as pneumonia. People who were unaffected were believed to possess protective antibodies to others, which are closely related strains of influenza. The rapid development of vaccine against the H2H2 virus and the availability and antibiotics to treat secondary infections limited the spread of the mortality of the pandemic. Now let's start with the second pandemic, the flu pandemic. The flu pandemic, known as the Hong Kong flu pandemic of 1968, was another global outbreak originating in China. It lasted for 2 years and from 1969 to 1970. This outbreak is the third influenza of the 20th century. The 1968 flu pandemic resulted in an estimated 1 million deaths. The pandemic began by the emergence of a virus known as influenza A, subtype H3N2, which is suspected that the virus evolved from the strain of influenza of the 1957 pandemic. Although the 1968 flu caused only a few deaths worldwide, the virus was highly contagious. With 2 weeks of its appearance in July of Hong Kong, 500,000 cases were reported, and the virus continued to spread throughout Southeast Asia. Several months later, the virus reached the U.S. in Panama Canal Zone. It may be because it was the area of returning soldiers from California from the ongoing Vietnam conflict at that time. By the end of December, the virus spread throughout Western Europe, Eastern Europe, multiple countries in Africa, and Central and South America. The virus had 2 waves, and the second causing more deaths. The flu affected varying degrees of severity in different populations, like how it affected small numbers in Japan, but the US having more numbers of cases. The symptoms are of a typical influenza: chills, fever, pain, and weakness. But the symptoms lasted around 4 and 6 days. The highest mortality rate was associated with mostly infants and the elderly. The pandemic peaked. Even though a vaccine was developed, it became available after the pandemic peaked in most countries. Comparison. Besides COVID-19 and the pandemics listed being different viruses and some differences, I learned that they have some similarities. For example, COVID-19 and the pandemics listed both originated in the continent of Asia, presumably China, which both have two waves, with the flu pandemic lasting 2 years. And just like COVID-19, the Asian flu and flu pandemic both have millions of deaths, except that the death count of COVID-19 is still rising, so we don't know the full number at this time. All of the viruses were spread all the viruses spread worldwide, with the US taking most of the deaths and cases. And the virus affected populated areas, which resulted in more cases, but low numbers of cases in less populated areas. But unlike past pandemics, we have more advanced technologies to communicate to each other, such as Facebook, Twitter, and other platforms. For entertainment, we have TikTok, YouTube, video games such as Fortnite, PUBG, Call of Duty, etc., and other activities. I like how people here in the present are complaining that this is the worst virus ever, but we all know that the Spanish flu, Black Plague, and other pandemics are much worse. Reason why being that back then they couldn't just turn on a computer and say hi to their families, frontline workers having less protection, and that they didn't have much to do back then, and because going outside was simply suicide. And before I end this video, I'd like to apologize for not having any visuals. My excuse is that during the school year, I haven't spent that much time with my family, so I would try to spend much time with them in the morning. The reason why is because the afternoon is when I play my video games, and also because I try to help my sisters with their homework, trying to be useful. Even though the projects and homework is important for my grades, my family's too. Especially because my dad is an essential worker and that worries my mom sick. So again, I apologize for not meeting the required visuals or PowerPoints. But the information for making this project does say that it has to be my voice, so that's what I did. Anyhow, I hope this video found to be useful for you. Now that we came to the end, I would like to say goodbye and wish you good luck in this hard and stressful time amidst the coronavirus pandemic. I wish all you good luck and goodbye.